Okay, so now we are on day 2, which is the beginning of my first semester seminar process. So when I was a junior and I was in my first semester of my junior year and I was like, oh my God, junior year, I was, to be completely frank, nervous about thesis because, like I talked about in my day one like writing portion of the memoir, lots of people told me that it was a lot of extra work, that I couldn't do it, that I didn't want to do it, that it was a bad idea, etc., etc., etc. And it ended up being like, okay, so if here's right, they ended up being over here because thesis program was exactly the right thing for me. And what you can see it right there. It was exactly the right thing for me in my junior year because, as I talked about in my last video, my sophomore year lacked holistic academic vigor, was I think the phrase I used. And it was a lot of memorize the A push, memorize the chem, memorize the like write the English paper, like, okay, moving on. And when I got to junior year and I walked into my first seminar class and we had a discussion, but we didn't have a discussion that was like, I'm gonna say this, and just because the teacher isn't mad at me, and then that one overly enthusiastic person who is usually me, who is like, and then nobody responds to it, just hangs in the air, and the teacher's like, yeah, and like tries to get other students to talk, and it was always really awkward. Like my first 2 years of high school, like discussions were just like. But then we get to thesis and like everybody wants to be there and everybody's really smart. And I remember writing an essay about how I was like, the fact that I'm in a classroom with people who want to be here because we had just gotten in, so the application process was fresh, is mind changing. Like, okay, here's my brain, like this is little gaps, and it was exploding. I mean, I was so happy to be in that seminar class, and we were block 3. And let me tell you, block 3, I was in love with that group of people. I mean, we were just so tight, and we really bonded over this course of having all those discussions and like figuring out what we believed. And let me tell you, I walked into this whole like let's figure out what you believe process of seminar thinking that I knew everything about myself. And I'm pretty self-absorbed and self-reflective, so I would say that I know myself pretty well. Now I would say that I know myself quite thoroughly. But I really actually learned some things about myself through that process, which is, I know like people say, but that's kind of a big deal for me. Like I literally like had like thought I had like figured Gibby out. Like I was like, no, that's me. Either way, so through this process, discussion and reflection and research, I really discovered a few things. Okay, let's get my eraser out. 1. I love to learn. And I know that seems kind of silly now, but I think somewhere along the way, somewhere in Algebra 1 and somewhere in, freshman and sophomore year, I had lost, come closer. Hi, uncut. Okay, I had lost the sense that I love to, learn just for the sake of learning. And seminar was that. It was learning for the sake of discussion and quality of thought, which was mind-blowing. 2, I love to learn with other smart people. There's just no comparison, and motivated, it really is the key here. There's really no comparison to like what you can achieve with a group of people who care. And that kind of leads me to some things I think about later about apathy is like the worst thing that can happen to human society. Because when you have people who care, there's just no comparison, and motivated, it really is the key here. There's really no comparison to like what you can achieve with a group of people who care. And that kind of leads me to some things I think about later about apathy is like the worst thing that can happen to human society. Because when you have people who care and are smart, I mean, there's no limit to what you can accomplish. I remember bringing my class, like every time I would have seminar first, I'd be like, oh, I have seminar. And I would bring them donuts, and we would always switch off. Like somebody would always bring us donuts back when I could eat donuts. And that was just it was such a group that I cared about. And there were some other good memories like that, when we blew bubbles together, when we made up our own religions, and when we played, we played, like, we meditated, with Fiona's group, and they did Buddhism. We played the Mormon game, where you blindfold somebody. So basically what happens is one person gets blindfolded and one person leads them through a maze, and like everybody around them is like, go the wrong way, go the wrong way. And they're supposed to represent how like life tries to tell us go the wrong way, but the Holy Spirit can guide us through whatever we need to. And sorry, Mr. B. And that was a good thing. And then let's see, anything else? Oh, I learned another thing. 3. Not only do I love to learn, I heart research. So through the seminar process and through that literature review, I learned that I really love to read psychological papers. And this was something that I would have never expected about myself. This is probably the most unexpected thing that happened to me in that first semester, is that I found out that I love to read long, complicated, like difficult psychology papers, because something about the way that like we can like take what is so nebulous and amorphous and confusing, like the mind, and down into numbers was like. And so to give that little get that a little more premise, our last unit of thought in our seminar process was happiness. And so I was like, okay, we're probably going to read like some philosophy, some like Kant or something. Who knows? I don't know if I pronounced that right. I don't really care. And that's fine. And then Miss Cliff sent us science papers, like really long science papers. And I was like, gross. Ooh, quantifying happiness. And then I was like, wait. Quantifying happiness. And at that point in my life, it's still like, I just have always been so convinced that people just aren't as happy as they could be. They're just like, meh, I have to do a research paper. What was me? And I just never understood that. I've never been that person. I've never understood where those people are coming from. I don't really want to. I like being happy, like, all the time. It's really a good time. I'm not even gonna lie. And so when we did our literature review for the happiness unit, I did my literature review on happiness and choices. And I was absolutely fascinated by the science of happiness. And specifically, this one example really blew my mind. So, hey, Mr. V, just talking about science. You can totally be in the video.